Glad to have you joining us here today. Now, I know our last panel talked a lot about the legislative side of getting involved and staying connected to the movements that you're really passionate about and having some kind of action there. This next panel is going to tell us all
Glad to
about
have you joining us here today. Now, I know
the ways that we can get involved in a non-legislative way, but you can still have an incredible impact. So this next one is Changemakers and Tech Activism. I'm going to introduce Kaylyn, our moderator, and they'll be able to share with us some ideas and some ways to have that activism piece to change the world. Kaylyn, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I am so excited to be here today with all of you. My name is Kaylyn Matis, and I am an artificial intelligence consultant. My background spans the industries of business intelligence, communications, and narrative. Also, I'm currently based in the Washington, D.C. area, so if you're local, please feel free to reach out and say hi. So today we're here to discuss changemakers and tech activism. Activism can take many forms, and those impacted by a system bring the only vital perspective to the table. This panel will explore how education, social media, and mental health overlap regarding the health and safety of young people. These panelists know where they're going and what they need to do. Are you ready to join the movement? Throughout the discussion, audience members are more than welcome to use the chat feature to submit questions to our panelists that will be answered at the end of the session. I am joined by panelists Zhamilya Bilyalova, Crystal Widado, and Jessica Chiriboga. I'll turn it over to the panelists for a quick introduction, starting with Zhamilya.
Hi there. So my name is Zhamilya, and I am based in New York City, but I also go to a school in Massachusetts. And my friend Doris and I have started privacy initiative to raise awareness about the online privacy issues that are faced by our generation. And it's been a great honor to be a lookup innovator over the spring and summer, and I'm very excited to be in the summit for the first time and to hear this conversation. Thank you.
And Crystal, do you want to introduce yourself next?
Yeah, for sure. My name is Crystal Widado. I use they, she pronouns, and I'm a current senior at Glendora High School in Southern California, and I would describe myself as an intersectional mental health activist. I first got involved with mental health work around 5 years ago because of a lot of racialized bullying and suicidal ideation that I experienced, and from there on out, I've just been really involved with making sure our conversations around mental health are really cognitive or conscious of like a lot of the systemic factors and things like systemic racism and our like economic systems and how they impact our mental health and our healthcare systems and how they impact our mental health.
And Jessica?
Hello, everybody. My name is Jess Chiriboga, and I'm a junior at Dartmouth College in Hanover, New Hampshire. I currently serve as student body president over at Dartmouth and our chair of our student government mental health committee. I am also a co-chair of the Dartmouth JED campus work group on integration of well-being and belonging into the student experience. Mental health and LGBTQ+ advocacy are some of my main focuses, and I'm very honored to join these amazing panels today and talk more about the role of tech in our advocacy. So thank you so much for joining us.
Wow, you guys are doing absolutely amazing things. So I guess just to get into our introduction, how did you get started in tech activism? And, was there a person or an event that inspired you to do so? And we'll start with Jessica this time.
Yeah, so happy to discuss that. So my first start in tech activism was really sort of at the tail end of my high school experience. I had been on social media then for the last 2 years on Instagram on my, at that time I used it on my computer. I didn't yet have a real phone until late sophomore year, early junior year. I had a flip phone before that. And at first it was really difficult to use social media. I didn't really know how to use it. I would post the most random things, but as I sort of got my feet under me, I discovered that I could use social media to advertise different things that I wanted to plan at my high school, Glendora High School at the time. And so I got involved in organizing for LGBTQ+ rights at my high school. I got involved with a organization called the Gay, Lesbian, Straight Education Network, which is a national nonprofit, as a national student council member. And I soon realized that using social media was a great tool for me to promote different events, for me to promote different parts of LGBTQ plus history that were ignored, that my classmates at my high school and that students in the local community could see on my story, or see me post. So that was sort of my start with tech activism, using it to spread awareness and tell people about events that I cared about and I helped organize and that I thought would have a positive impact on their life.
Awesome. And we'll turn it over to Crystal.
Yeah, this is a really perfect transition because I got involved with tech activism watching Jessica get involved with tech activism. At the time when Jessica was a senior, I was a freshman, and we had worked together at the school mental health club that Jessica had founded. So I was always watching her stories. And around the time too, that was the first time in my life that I'd been really exposed to the Black Lives Matter movement after George Floyd's murder. So I was just watching Jessica like speak out and do all these things. And at the time, and still at this time too, I looked up to Jessica so much, and I wanted to like get involved and really use my voice for the Black Lives Matter movement, but also for like broad, like I said before, like intersectional mental health causes. And I think I realized like just because around that time was around March of 2020 and everyone was just at home on social media all day, that was really effective to get into tech activism, because that's when there's just so much like exposure to social media and everyone was on their phones for like, people's screen times were probably at like 14, 15 hours a day at that point. And I know mine was too. So that's why I kind of like realized that there was a lot of good that could come out of, you know, we'll get into the nuances later, but at the time there was a lot of good that could come out of reposting and creating infographics. So yeah.
Thank you. And I think it's so interesting and exciting to see how, you know, Jessica, you've influenced Crystal's activism and vice versa. So Zami, if you want to wrap us up here.
Yeah, I think the type of work that I do is a little bit more on like the intersection of tech ethics and mental health. So I might have to tell a little story to kind of explain what I do. So basically, like my whole life I've been kind of in the activism space in different ways, like starting from like initiatives around food insecurity and then also accessibility of like period products in restrooms. So that's just what I've been doing like up until like middle of my high school. But I have also been always like studying kind of computer science, like robotics, math. That was like my passion in school. So I wanted to connect like my interest in tech with my passion for like mental health and creating a safer and more just world. And one of the stories that really inspired me to get into it is when in my high school we use like one cards basically to tap and then walk into doors. And I know a lot of schools are doing it right now, and many other places. Basically, that's how you enter like spaces sometimes. But a bunch of our students found out that there's actually an app you can just download and kind of open doors with the app instead of using the card. So I guess there's like a security issue, but yeah, people started using the app, and that definitely posed a threat to our safety. And when the administration found out, they kind of brought us together and just simply said, oh, don't use this application. This is bad. Like, this is dangerous. And that was literally the end of the conversation. So no one was allowed to use the app. But at the same time, we kind of got disappointed because I went to like a STEM school. It's like one of the like really good ones in the US. And even at a place like this where we study like technologies since we're young, we were not given like that perspective of just kind of critically thinking about the technologies that we use and the apps that we download and how convenient and easy they might be. But at the same time, we do give out a lot of information. And in this particular case, now we don't know who owns this app. It might be like a bunch of people, and now they have this like location information and identity information about a bunch of kids like in the middle of nowhere. And we know we have a lot of conversations around school safety right now. So basically, I just kind of got disappointed that we weren't taught like that perspective to question the tech that we use. Yeah, so I decided to start Privacy with my friend a couple years ago when I started college. And yeah, and I'll tell, I guess, more later about that. So.
No, thank you so much for sharing your story. I think narrative is such a central part to activism, so I appreciate you taking the time to do so. And, going into our next question, I noticed, many of you have had a lot of clubs or you're involved in a lot of activities, and whether that was in your high school or moving into your college career. So do you think your desire for balance gets in the way of being a true activist? And then with that, how can we organize in a way that is productive, but also allows for time to take care of our whole selves? And I know, Crystal, you had a lot to say about this beforehand, so I would love to have you go first.
Yeah, so I'll answer the first question first about like whether or not balance like kind of gets in the way of our activism. And this is just my opinion, but I think no, I think like there's honestly, especially in the United States, like a lot of temptation within the activism field to go into consulting or go into some like very much less ethical like careers than and really trade in our activist values for just like modeling like a t-shirt or a slogan and just trading it away for capitalism, right? Like I think there's honestly like I think looking for balance and looking for like balance between even like using that past example of like modeling t-shirts or whatever, or like mental health merchandise. I think there's a balance in being an activist of being like, okay, yeah, I'm going to say yes to this, but that doesn't mean I'm going to base my entire activism around only like the commodification of social justice, right? So I think balance is not just it doesn't get in the way. I think it's very like necessary for being like an activist that stays true to like your own values. But that's just like my take on one side of it.
I really love the phrase commodification of social justice. I think we've seen that, in various forms on, Instagram, Twitter, especially during like large protest movements. And Crystal, since you brought it up, before I move on to anyone else, do you mind telling me a little bit more about what that means to you?
Yeah, I think for me, it literally looks like a lot of people that I've met in the field, like especially when I was younger, when I was like a sophomore in high school or a freshman, and now looking at them like now and then seeing like a LinkedIn update of them working for like some huge like consulting firm that or doing some like job that I know that they would previously have not been like they would have very much been like very much critiqued in the past. And I, a part of me like totally understands, and I've like I'm not like completely innocent of this too, right? And I think there's no like ethical really consumption under the systems that we live under, but I think there's like a fine line between like trading away those systems and working for organizations or companies that like we very much all know do like Exxon or like huge like climate huge companies that contribute to like the climate crisis that we all know have like nothing to do with our values, but we got there because activism is like easy to market away. So I think that's what it looks like for me, but again, lots of nuance there.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think, like you said before, just balancing that, consumption. So I'll hand it off to Zami to go next.
Yeah, I think one thing I would love to add is I know a lot of us are kind of exploring like digital well-being, but at the same time we are online too all the time. And I kind of just want to say that this isn't like just our issue. It's like our whole generation is figuring this out right now. We're like the first ones to grow up like digitally like this, and we shouldn't like put too much pressure on ourselves. Like we really are all in this together. Like we don't know what we're doing, and we're just like trying to find a way to use these tools for better and in a more safer way. So that's kind of what I keep in mind. And even like right now, I was just thinking yesterday, like that I am pretty addicted to a lot of like the tech that I use. And I know like one of the previous panelists, like she started this No Social Media November. And just for myself, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do this. Like, I'm gonna try this thing, but I might have to come back for like my other type of work. So it's really just trying to be honest with yourself and people around you, like, yeah, and not put like too much pressure on ourselves. So yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with the putting too much pressure on ourselves. I think it's so easy, especially when you're in that like activist, headspace or work, to just expect a lot out of yourself. So thank you for bringing that up. Also, can you tell me a little bit more about what No Social Media November is? I haven't heard about that, and I can see our audience members being excited to learn more.
Oh yeah, I mean, I just learned about it yesterday. I was scrolling through like the other speakers for the summit, so you can find out. I don't remember her name exactly, but yeah, I guess if you just like search up No Social Media November, you can. So like my thing was that I've always wanted to kind of completely log off for a few like months or yeah, but none of my friends really like I didn't see kind of the same attempt, or I just felt like I was gonna be alone, or I was gonna like miss out, or yeah, I just like couldn't do it. And then knowing that there's this huge group of people that are actually doing it all together, it made it so much easier to just say, okay, I'm actually gonna commit to this and not be on social media. And there's like 3 ways you can choose. You can stay like just for school and work, or you can just completely log off. And I think in my case, I'll just maybe like delete like Instagram and like Twitter or something like that. So yeah, there's different ways you can choose how you want to commit, and then you get access to kind of the support group, and yeah, to just try it out together.
Okay, I absolutely love that, especially having the option to like tap into layers, like such as only using it for school and work. Gila on a past panel had mentioned how her friends live everywhere and that it's the easiest way to communicate with them. So I love allowing that space to still communicate with your loved ones while also logging off. So to get back on track, I wanted to go back to Jessica for our last answer to this question.
Yeah, I mean, to your first question, I think that it's really, really hard to find balance in for a lot of people, advocates, activists, whatever. And I think for me personally, I definitely struggled with that, using social media both for, pleasure, leisure, just, sitting in your bed scrolling through TikTok or Instagram, and then also using it to spread the word about issues that I really cared about. So I would say it took me years to get to a point where, now in junior year of college, I use social media almost exclusively for the activism work, and will do my occasional post, but I really don't spend time scrolling and liking other people's photos or content, just because I know that it's like, I've discovered that for me, that's not productive and it doesn't make me happy. And there's other things off the phone or elsewhere on the phone that I can like find a lot more happiness and joy from. And so I think that that's like a very personal journey. But it really requires you to step back, and whether that's journaling or talking to a friend about it, it sometimes requires getting off of it and sort of thinking through why you're interacting with the technology in this way, because it can be so hard. I know that, some people here who use TikTok might get that message that always comes up if you stay on TikTok too long. There's a pre-recorded video that comes up that says, take a break. And then my friends and I, we always joke whenever we get that message, it just makes us want to stay on longer. Everybody ignores it. But sometimes you do need those outside influences, those times where you just take the break off and sort of reevaluate how you want that balance to be like. And so I think for me, balance looks like on a termly basis or a monthly basis, just sort of checking in with myself and seeing like what are the ways that I can improve, and like find more time for rest, because rest is really important in the work that we're doing. And then to your second question of how can we organize in a way that is productive, but also allows for time to take care of our whole selves. I think some of the best advice that I've actually gotten this fall is that I really need to incorporate rest in my schedule. And it's something that's going to allow me to succeed. I think oftentimes in this world, we're told that constantly working and constantly being productive is the metric of success. But I think that's a lie, and I think it's a myth that's sold to us. And I think that rest is important, and it should be valued a lot more in our culture. And I think that whatever you want to do in life, rest is integral to that. It allows your the biological processes in your body, which, as a non-STEM major, I don't know too much about, but I do know that it is important to rest and allow your body to take that time to do the work that it needs to do internally, and for your brain to take a break and think about other things and sleep. And so I oftentimes like going for a hike or a walk or a bike ride when I can, because that really allows me to not focus on the things up here, but to focus on just, you know, 1 foot in front of the other, 2 feet cycling. And I definitely encourage you all to do that when you have the chance.
Yeah, thank you. I'm laughing because I've definitely gotten that TikTok that comes up. And I recently set like time limits, and then the time limit just seems to go by so fast. So a great point about balance. And, you know, going into our next question, which I know was Crystal's, and I want to direct the initial answer towards Crystal's, but the buzzword or phrase of performative activism has been incredibly prevalent in online discussions throughout major political and social events, such as Black Lives Matter and the reversal of Roe v. Wade. So what does performative activism mean to each of you? And do you think it can be harmful or helpful to a tech activism cause?
Yeah, I'm the person who originally like proposed this question because I think it's like an essential like conversation that needs to be had whenever we talk about tech activism. But to start, I think like the majority of the time, I'm just saying majority now because I might like my brain might go off and think of like one specific instance where it might for some reason be helpful. But I think I think performative activism is overall detrimental to our causes. And I think that because performative activism is a really easy way for people to like feel like they're on like a higher moral ground on things. And we see that I personally see that a lot with mental health, because mental health is seen as like such an easy, quote unquote, like an easy social justice, because everyone like on some level agrees that mental health is something that we shouldn't feel like shameful to talk about, right? But then if you want to actually talk about like action steps or mental health action instead of just like awareness, then like no one wants to talk about that. No one wants to talk about like how the healthcare system messes up everyone's mental health with being like just completely unaffordable in the United States, or how it affects the mental health care system. Or no one wants to talk about how mental health is like inherently tied to the criminal justice system and how punitive our like criminal justice system is as a whole, and how that like especially impacts people who live with a mental health condition. So mental health is like not an easy social justice, but it is seen as one, right? Because everyone kind of agrees on it. So everyone has a lot of performative activism in talking, or like plays a part in performative activism by talking about mental health and ignoring about like, you know, mental health action, if that makes sense. So that's something that quite frustrates me, but also is something that I'm like, instead of being frustrated about it lately, I've been thinking about like, okay, so, you know, that's a thing. How are we gonna move on from it?
You had mentioned that you had a specific instance. If you're open to sharing that, I think everyone would love to hear it.
Yeah, I've had specific instances of me doing performative activism, and I think we all have at one point too. And I'm not like afraid to like admit that, especially as like a teenager. I think that's like something that's, you know, just a part of growing up and part of realizing. Like for me, like I definitely did not look into a lot of like the causes that I like posted about on an hourly basis in March of 2020, because everyone else was doing it and I wanted to feel like I was a good person. So I did it too, right? I remember I did like that a lot with the Black Lives Matter movement. And since then, I've been very cautious with like almost giving myself 24 hours to really look into it, to something before like reposting. Not to say that I'm like not in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement or not in solidarity with other movements. It's just it's more meaningful, I think, to myself to actually look into those things before reposting them.
Yeah, and I love your self-accountability on that, because I've had to do that too in the past. And I think it's so easy to just repost something without, you know, considering the topic or the content. So yeah, taking that pause or that 24 hours to learn about what you're sharing is so important, and such a great idea too. So Zami, I'm happy to pass over the mic to you.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I don't think I have like that much experience in this particular question, but I think one thing I remember, like, I think from one side, performative activism like almost even like helped me, because I remember there are certain movements that I was kind of like quietly researching or like looking at, And because a lot of people were posting, I thought to myself, oh my God, like I probably have something useful to say too. Like, and I remember when like people would go to protest, I was looking at like how to stay like private when you, like just go protesting or like safe. And so I posted like a bunch of kind of like tips for making sure that no one like identifies you and stuff like that. And it ended up being like super useful to a bunch of people. So on one side, I think it does have some good things to it too. And then also sometimes I would think that, oh, maybe what I'm doing, even like in the privacy space at the beginning, I thought it was just like performative. But at the same time, I think it did help to start a conversation anyway and kind of like provide the language for people to use to talk about these things. So yeah, but at the same time, I do understand like the pressure and how it can even like prevent like a healthy debate that could have happened, but instead everyone is just like kind of following each other. And I wish there was more space definitely for like just healthy debates. But that's kind of where I am right now. So yeah.
So you mentioned a healthy debate quite a few times throughout your answer, which I think is an excellent point. Do you think it's possible to have a healthy debate on social media, especially about, a major movement or, type of like social justice movement that's going on? And if so, what does that look like to you?
Yeah, that's a great question because I think I almost kind of didn't believe that it's possible just because of the structure of social media or like the way it's architectured and like designed. It's not really designed for healthy debate. It's designed for like things to go viral or like people fighting each other in the comments. And so I think like, and a lot of people do feel pressure to just have one like certain opinion, and a lot of people like can't express themselves fully. And to the point where I thought like, oh, it's just important to create spaces outside of social media. So yeah, it's just something that I think about all the time, just the way like these platforms are designed. And yeah, so for me, I think in my case, I would try to create a more like private groups where people can kind of like feel more comfortable to speak. But yeah, like social media in general, it's definitely like a tough place to be if you want to talk right now. Yeah, it's like designed for like escalation and yeah, just I don't know what to do about social media right now. Like it's kind of like a different topic, but in my case, I would try to just create different space. When other platforms are just like in person, because that's what we've missed out on like during COVID and just in general growing up. I feel like our generation was definitely more kind of shielded from the world, so we didn't have that kind of experience of really meeting like people with different perspectives and learning how to talk to each other and disagree. So yeah, just like figuring it out right now too.
Jessica, I see you aggressively nodding. Is there anything that you'd like to add or, jump off of Zami's point?
No, I thought the points were all great. And I don't know. I think something that I would add would be that sometimes when I feel myself feeding into this performative activism, I encourage myself to honestly just like get off social media, read a book, read an article. I know it's really hard sometimes to read a book, so I definitely recommend like shorter or even like longer form articles. They won't take as long as a book, but you'll still get the depth of analysis that you want to like really help you understand an issue even more. And then I say the second part to performative activism is really like making sure we're acknowledging the work that people have done before us and making sure we're not co-opting or pretending, passing off work that's not our own as our own. Like that's really harmful and really destructive. And I think that it's important to acknowledge the work that's been done before so we can, sort of adapt our actions towards that.
Yeah, thank you. And I loved your point about, hopping offline and reading an article. I think it's so easy to get bogged down in the citizen journalism that is or will be social media. So returning to actual journalism is so valuable.
Can I actually say one more thing?
Yeah, of course.
I just remember like because like social media is not a reflection of our world at all. Like it's a very like distorted mirror, and a lot of times you hear when people like voice their opinions, they're usually people say things that are like more extreme than like what people generally think kind of in real world. So it's important to keep in mind that what you're reading like online or what you're exposed to is not like real world. And yeah, I think it's very important, just like you said, to just like leave that space for a little bit. It has like good things to it, but you really have to kind of get exposed to it outside, like in real world. Because yeah, the things on social media definitely over like, how to say it, yeah, it's not like, it's either like more extreme basically than the real world. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that was perfectly said. And I completely agree about how, social media can distort our, our norm or offers mostly extremes. Crystal, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, and on that note too, another thing I wanted to add was like being able to talk to your friends about it. I just remembered, I think Jessica and I had like a really short conversation in that like time period of the Black Lives Matter movement where I was like, how are you doing? And then we just like chatted it out for like not even like a really long time over Instagram. And I think having that conversation, having people similar to Jessica in my life at those points, and even then now, like just being able to talk openly with my friends and ask them questions if they do know about things and learn from each other is like a really important thing too, outside of like the performativity that might happen. So that's something that I wanted to include.
So we just had a question come in for Instagram, and Crystal, you kind of already touched on it, but what approaches do you all use to connect with people in real life, and how much effort do you put into that, or maybe what does that look like?
Yeah, I can start answering this one. I love like just incorporating people into like every part of my life. Like if it's studying, I like to go on like a study call or go to the library together or just like go to a cafe together, even if it's like doing things like work or homework or stuff that doesn't, usually require having like being with someone. I like incorporating people in my life with that. There's like a good amount of people that I have just like kind of on my notes app. I'm like, oh, I really want to like go to the library with this person this weekend, or to go to like a cafe with this person, or even just like to like after the conference ends, I'm going to like the Huntington Beach Public Library to study, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna like find people and take a lot. I'm just gonna incorporate people into like parts of my life where I'm not at school or I'm not like in a meeting or doing work. So that's how I try and connect with people, and I put a decent amount of effort into that. I'd say like I'm very intentional with making sure that I have stuff planned out like for the next weekend and stuff like that.
Hey, I totally get social butterfly vibes from you. Is there anyone that's less extroverted on the panel that wants to share how they, ensure that they still connect with others offline?
We might all be social butterflies.
Which there's nothing wrong with that too. Jessica, did you want to hop in and share how you connect with others in real life?
Yeah, so I think something that I've been thinking about these last year and a half is, I go to Dartmouth, which is a small school, and, we're all very busy. So I think when there's like a week where I know that it's going to be really hard for me to like plan out times ahead of time to hang out with friends, I'll try to like sometimes study in a more public place, like college, or or I'll sit, I'm living in an off-campus house, so I'll try to sit in like the living room instead of like studying in my room, because then like I'm still gonna be like studying or whatever, or pretending to study, but at least when friends come down or random classmates walk by, that's a moment for me to get like a 5-10 minute conversation to feel a little bit better about whatever sort of work I'm doing. So that's what I try to do, like when it's feeling like I'm not going to have much time to connect with people in real life. And then when I'm feeling a little less overwhelmed, I definitely do like to plan meals with other people, because I think we live such busy lives, and like I think having some sort of scheduling can be really helpful. And like I have some friends who don't need a schedule, and they just sort of are able to just randomly, hang out with friends at different times. But I've found that, being intentional and scheduling ahead of time, or just like putting myself physically in a space that's going to be conducive to that is really helpful.
Yeah, no, being intentional is so important, especially, now that I've left college, I'm like planning weeks in ahead now. But Zami, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, sure. So I think, well, personally, I do value like relationships very much, and even I remember when I went to college, and it was like like COVID when everything was shut down, and so we weren't allowed to like leave campus or yeah. So basically, it was definitely very tough, like academically, but it allowed me to kind of have much deeper friendships than I would have had as like normal year that I've developed. And I, even though like I didn't finish like a bunch of courses, I was like really struggling, but because I was able to make those like friendships, I think that was totally worth it. And right now, even actually taking a semester off because I wanted to be one of the reasons why I took a semester off, because I wanted to be with my family, and yeah, and kind of just prioritizing people over like tech. And even like with my little sister, she's 13, and she like completely grew up on like social media, and she like tells me that it's very hard for her to find friends in real life just because like she didn't practice as much as like I did growing up. So right now, like I even like talked to my parents, and we are like moving her to a different school where it's like in a smaller kind of like, we moved out of the city a little bit, and so that after school she can also like hang out with people and not just like take a bus and go home. There are like more spaces, like there's a little maker space near their school. There's like a football field where you can play, and yeah, just like really like creating like opportunities where you can meet people, because it's like just very easy to kind of just go home and be on your like technologies. And yeah, it is a tough thing that I feel like our generation, and especially the young generation, has to deal with. And so yeah, I just hope there's like more opportunities for this like in-person interactions, because they really are like irreplaceable. Like you really can't get that on social media. So yeah.
Crystal, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, just really quickly on that note too, like being able to set really good boundaries and letting people know like what forms of communication you are like most easy to be reached by. Like for me, it's one of my, something I'm working on and something I'm kind of ashamed about, but like I am really hard to reach on text and Instagram DMs. Like I am a quick like emailer most of the time, but like it's like, oh, it's hard. But I have let a lot of people in my life know that, hey, you know, if I don't respond to your text or DM, it's not that I hate you. It's literally just because there's so much going on. And I am really good with like voice messaging people back sometimes. But that's how I gotta like work. And I'm very like conscious about letting other people know it doesn't mean I hate you, or it doesn't mean like I don't want to be friends. It's just how my life is organized right now. But I'm working on it, obviously, because I don't want to be like a 17-year-old who doesn't text people, you know. But yeah.
No, 100%. Community building is so important, but it also takes time to, craft and nurture those relationships. So thank you all for sharing. And I want to squeeze in one more before we get to our last question, because I know all of you were excited about it. So can you give me just a short description of what your hot take about tech activism is? And, for audience members, feel free to drop yours in the chat too. I'd love to hear it. Sammy, do you want to start?
I think I might need a second, actually.
Jessica or Crystal, or either of you have one on top of your mind?
I can go first to give y'all a little bit more time, because I kind of had mine prepared, but then I kind of realized that I like said the opposite thing a few minutes ago. But I kind of was just thinking about recently, kind of what Zami was saying about how like in some ways performative activism has been sort of helpful in helping other people to see to learn more about the activism causes that they want to engage with. But I think for my like hot take, it's less about like performative activism, but more about just like social media activism as like a whole, right? Because I think I think there are a lot of critiques about social media activism, and something that I will say is what Kaylyn, you said earlier about like citizen journalism, and how I think a lot of things on social media and a lot of things that are said on social media are more accessible for people to just say them there. And I think it's like a little bit in some ways like just kind of classist to say that like what is said on social media is always like like not credible, right? Because I think a lot of people don't have journalism degrees or don't have access to like the New York Times, right, to write these articles or to make their opinions seem more, or their even not just their opinions, but in mental health specifically, their lived experiences to seem more credible. But I think social media does provide like a better like accessibility in that sense. So that's like my hot take, that social media activism on balance does like more good than harm. I've just turned this into like a debate topic, haven't I? So like, on balance, it does more good than harm in that sense. But that's my hot take.
No, I'm totally following you, and I absolutely love discussing this, when we were all getting together and practicing. I think that balance between, narrative and citizen journalism is so hard to find on social media. So
I think
go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So I think one thing that maybe even like adults kind of assume about us when we do this type of work is that and I know like a lot of people call us like digital natives, and I really stopped liking that word at all, because it kind of assumes that we were born with this like inherent technical skills and like media literacy skills, and kind of just like they kind of wait for us to maybe grow up and then we will fix it all. But the thing is that everyone grows up very differently. Some people had like a flip phone growing up, that's all, and then another person might have had access to like a monitor, and then they know how to use internet a little bit like safer and better. And so yeah, just kind of understanding that we do not like, we're not some type of like tech geniuses, and we really need like support of parents and like teachers and policymakers, and kind of just to all work together on creating a safer digital world for all generations to come. And yeah, just kind of not assume that we have this like innate skills, and yeah, so just kind of bridging the gap between like generations. And yeah, so that's why I don't really like when we're like called that, but it is like something we're a little bit more comfortable with, but still it kind of just doesn't recognize like the inequalities that people face like growing up digitally. So yeah, that's like one thing I wanted to share.
And Jessica, did you have anything to add to that? You sure? Okay. And moving into our final question, how can, whether it's myself or other audience members, support your movement?
Yeah, so I'm happy to go first. So a lot of my mental health work right now is revolving around my college, and something that I've been really passionate about is like training up the underclassmen below me to be in the best position to carry it forward. So teaching them how to use Google Maps, My Maps, or how to create different posts on Canva to put on Instagram, or how to use the Dartmouth events calendar, which is something you have to like figure out the technical logistics for. So like things like that, I think it's always been really helpful in my life when adults, staff members, faculty, teachers, or even other students have like lended their support and have helped me navigate those logistical challenges to get the word out about things that I'm doing. So I think that, that's a fairly obvious piece of advice, but I think that oftentimes sometimes students don't reach out for that help. And I think that like checking in with students can really help, or checking in with activists and seeing if they need any support is really helpful. And I'd say the second thing is like, it's very easy to have like a very pessimistic attitude about tech, but I think in many ways, technology is going to be a part of our movements for at least the foreseeable future. So I think the priority, or like the majority of our mental energy should be focused on how do we minimize the bad and maximize the good. And so I think that's energy that's going to be well spent.
Yeah, thank you, Jessica. Zhamilya, I see you like starting to raise your hand.
Sure, no. But I can go ahead. Yeah, so for privacy, okay, there's two things that we do basically. First one is content creation and like storytelling. As I've said like a little story at the beginning, we do try to find those stories that kind of bridge our privacy concerns with real life consequences, because it's really hard to say like, oh, with me sharing certain information right now, like how is it gonna affect me 10 years or like immediately. So we do make like videos and podcasts about these type of stories. And yeah, we're definitely always looking for people to join us to create content, and that way you can both like learn and share something. So it's something we focus on right now. And another thing that we do is we're creating like designing a survey for like young people around the country and the world to understand what are their privacy concerns that they have, and do they like talk to their parents about it, or do they learn more about it, or do they like not care, and just kind of just get a sense of like how our generation feels, because I definitely see like very like different opinions about this. So yeah, and our website is privacy.org, like privacy, but privacy. So yeah, I think that's one way, and we're always looking for people to join. And you can check out our YouTube and podcast on the website as well. So yeah, thank you.
And passing it off to Crystal.
Yeah, echoing Zami, everything I do is very much on my Instagram all the time, and I'm always looking forward to, working with more people. So, Mind Out Loud, Each Mind, all of this stuff, like go obviously join that. But also echoing what Jessica said about like pessimism, I think the thing that I would say that to like support the movement of like youth mental health and also just mental health justice is to not let tech activism activate like your Western nihilism. And Western nihilism is this idea by, I might say his name wrong, but Andrei Vitchek, about how like a lot of our like Western movements for social justice, even as like people of color, for example, for me, like are very much impacted by this like dark pessimism and sense of like defeat, but that revolutionary optimism and is a necessary amount of like cautious optimism that is required in order to still like move forward with these movements. So I would say like just be mindful of like the amount of nihilism or pessimism that you have when you're looking at like social media posts, and still like move forward with like solidarity and move forward with helping each other out. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, thank you so much. And in regards to optimism, it's so easy for me to be optimistic with so many young people like you working to change tech for the better. And I'll pass it back over to Kate.
I am going to just kind of echo Kaylyn. You all are incredible. And it's so hard not to be repetitive after every single panel, just because I really do think that you all are creating such a big impact that I can feel. And I'm not as connected, but I am still feeling the waves that you're making. And I'm so happy to ride in them. So just thank you again. Thank you for doing the work and having all of the action that follows the words. And I think one of the main things that I kind of grabbed from this panel is that accountability. There's an accountability factor and piece that we all need to consider. And thank you for like bringing that up and letting us know more about that and keeping us, right where we need to be. So thank you so much for being here, everyone. It's been such a pleasure. And we're going to take a break now. We're going to go have lunch. If you want to talk to an innovator and just have like a chatty lunch where you can talk and share ideas with everyone, come join us in the sessions tab, and we'll see you in a few minutes. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.